Betraying conventional wisdom, some truly awful horror ideas have somehow been given the green light over the years. Whether the concepts were flawed, the characters were one-dimensional, or there was simply no realistic way these films could ever work, somehow money was spent to get these stinkers made. So with that in mind, I'm Andrew from What Culture Horror, and here are 10 horror movies that suck so bad you can't believe they got made. Number 10. Dreamcatcher. When it comes to adapting the work of the legendary Stephen King, it's been an extremely mixed bag over the years. Quite simply, some of King's written tales just don't translate all that well to other mediums, and one of the very worst King adaptations is 2003's Dreamcatcher. Despite an impressive cast featuring the likes of Morgan Freeman, Thomas Jane, Damian Lewis, Timothy Olyphant, and Jason Lee, Brody Bruce represent yo, this tale of friends battling a horde of alien parasites was a total dud, butchering large elements of King's story and becoming a convoluted, bloated mess. Dreamcatcher should have been a slam dunk, but despite how King himself is fond of the movie, most people would class it as the worst ever adaptation of his work. Number 9. Shutter. The 2008 remake of the 2004 Thai movie of the same name, Shutter, which I picked up for £1 back in the day, centers on Joshua Jackson's Ben, a newly married photographer who moves to Japan with his wife Jane. After being involved in a traffic accident that leads to the death of a young girl, strange lights begin to appear in Ben's pictures. Could it be that he's just not very good at his job? Nah, instead it's all about an evil spirit. While the original Thai movie was a hit and had plenty of charm to it, the remake is just painfully dull, full of cliches and just a disappointing cash-in at a time when it was still all the rage to just lazily remake foreign language horrors. As for that cash-in element though, it actually kind of worked, as the film actually made nearly $50 million from its $8 million budget, which is really baffling. Number 8. Mary. Mary begins with a woman and her 2 daughters being discovered at sea after being presumed dead. What began as a jolly family sailing trip turned into a living hell when the salvage boat they were sailing on turned out to be haunted. Never convenient. With Gary Oldman and Emily Mortimer leading the cast and plenty of potential for seafaring scares, Mary could have been alright, but it turned out to be a complete shipwreck. Excuse the pun. The plot is all over the place, and even with an interesting premise and a claustrophobic location, Mary just isn't scary one bit. In fact, it's actually quite boring, and one of those rare bad Gary Oldman films. But hey, if you're looking for a genuinely great seaside set horror tale, you could do a lot worse and check out 1976's The Witch Who Came From the Sea. Number 7. The Resort. If you were friends with a horror fiction writer who asked you to come with her to an abandoned hotel on a remote island to investigate reports of a ghostly presence, would you go? If you said no, you are officially smarter than the characters in The Resort. Lex and her friends quickly find out that ghost hunting isn't as fun as Scooby-Doo makes it out to be, as they end up trapped in the creepy locale with the mythical half-faced girl hot on their heels, before they get picked off one by one in increasingly gruesome manners. Despite only clocking in at 75 minutes, The Resort feels like it's constantly running out of ideas. Bar one impressive face-ripping sequence, The Resort's just so vanilla and somehow manages to properly drag even with its short runtime. Number 6. Alone in the Dark. Oh boy. Movies inspired by video games had a dire reputation for the longest time imaginable, and right up there with the absolute worst of them is Uwe Boll's Alone in the Dark, which drew inspiration from the video game series of the same name. Whilst the first game was a genuine trailblazer, the same cannot be said about its movie counterpart. The Alone in the Dark film is just a properly rough one, full of abysmal camera work, stilted dialogue, and action so unexciting, you'd have no idea it was based on a game that used to be legitimately terrifying back in the day. Number 5. Alice in Murderland. Lewis Carroll's whimsical tales of Alice and her time in Wonderland are regarded as classics of children's literature. If you're in the mood to ruin a beloved childhood favourite though, here's a god-awful horror movie that borrows heavily from it. Yay. Alice Lewis is just your ordinary 21-year-old with a fear of growing up, so her best pals decide to throw her a special birthday party themed around Lewis Carroll's books. Unfortunately, somebody sneaks in dressed as a Jabberwocky and starts picking them all off. Alice in Murderland has all the bad qualities of a low-budget horror, but with none of the charm. It's poorly acted, poorly produced, poorly written, and you can even see crew members in several of the shots. Yeah, not good at all. Although it could be worse, it could be Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. Number 4. Slender Man. Real-life murders have always inspired horror movies, but there are times when it can verge into the exploitative. Case in point, Slender Man. In 2014, two 12-year-old girls lured their friend into a forest and stabbed her 19 times, almost killing her. They claim to have carried out this horrendous act to appease the Slender Man, a creature that had gained popularity through its appearance on various online forums. In 2018, just 1 year after the girls involved in the attack were sentenced, a film came out featuring the Slender Man as the main villain. Whilst not explicitly inspired by the real-life attacks, the movie was still way too close to the truth to be enjoyable. Also, it was really bad. Thinly constructed characters, the most lazily basic of plots, no actual scares. Slender Man had it all, and it was roundly savaged by audiences and critics alike. Number 3. American Psycho 2. Yes, there is an American Psycho 2. Originally written as a completely unaffiliated screenplay, this story was tweaked to include a tacked-on reference to the first film. The main character, a murderous criminology student played by Mila Kunis, begins the film by killing Patrick Bateman before... wait a second, she kills Patrick Bateman? That alone should be a red flag. Kunis' character then follows in Bateman's footsteps, covertly killing her classmates in order to advance her studies. Her course is overseen by a former FBI agent played by William Shatner. Yeah, that's another red flag. Nobody wanted a sequel to American Psycho, especially not one with so little to do with the first movie. Bret Easton Ellis, the author of the original novel, has gone on record with how much he hates this film, and even Mila Kunis herself has expressed regret that she was even in it. All of this without even mentioning how terrible the movie is, but that kind of goes without saying. Number 2. Exorcist 2: The Heretic. Quite possibly the worst big-name horror sequel of all time. Well, maybe until The Exorcist Believer came around last year. Exorcist 2: The Heretic is just so bad. Set 4 years after William Friedkin's Exorcist, here we have the teenage Regan McNeil struggling to adjust to life after her possession, while a priest questions her on the death of Father Merrin. Both Friedkin and William Peter Blatty, as in the writer of the Exorcist novel and its screenplay, opted against returning as they didn't feel a sequel was necessary. And boy, did Exorcist 2: The Heretic prove them right, with Blatty even reportedly attending a screening of the film where the audience was outright laughing at the horrors on screen. Still, don't let that put you off The Exorcist 3 though, for that is a genuinely stunning movie that's thankfully received a little more love in recent years. Number 1. Things. The story of 1989 independent Canadian horror Things is an absolutely fascinating one. Starring Barry J. Geels, one of the film's writers, and Amber Lynn, best known for her work in the adult industry, Things is about a group of men who have to fend off a series of mutant creatures created by a mad doctor. Sounds fairly unassuming until you learn that this is one of the worst made films in all of human history. Up there with The Room and Troll 2 in terms of famously dreadful films, Things is shoddily made, poorly acted, badly scripted, and about as scary as a paddling pool full of puppies. It doesn't help that Things was made on a budget of roughly nothing and shot on a Super 8 camera by people who had seemingly never even seen a film before, let alone made one. Although it's mad to think that something so terrible actually exists, there are plenty out there who love Things for just how horrible it is. It lives on in the hearts of fans of bad cinema and will stand forever as a testament to the phrase, so bad it's good. Or, just bad.